All right, 5.3, this is about Central and Southwest Asia. I'm going to show you guys a map of that area so that you can get a good feel for where everything is at and everything I'm talking about. So this is the area of Southwest and Central Asia. This part is considered Southwest right here. So we've got Saudi Arabia up to Turkey, and these areas up here. This is the Southwest, okay? And this is considered Central, okay? All of these countries that are right here. These countries right here are considered the Middle East, just so you know, because it's basically considered the middle of the East section of the world. This area is home to 3 of the 5 major world religions. We've got Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. They all were born in this area. They are all very popular in this area. Mostly Islam today is popular in this area. We've got an area right here, if you see this says Jerusalem. So right here in Israel, we've got Israel right here. Palestine's up here, which well, Lebanon is right there, but Palestine's right here. It's not officially in a country right now because they're having a tussle. We'll talk about that in a minute. There's a place in Jerusalem that's called the Holy Land. This is basically the area that both Islam, Christianity, and Judaism all deem to be, essential to their religions and holy areas to their religion. So, who's going to control it is always a big question. So that's the strife that's connected with this Holy Land. But there's also connection because these 3 religions are more similar than people know. This whole area is very important because of the Silk Road I mentioned in the last video. The Silk Roads would come through. They would come through right here to go to Africa, and they'd come through over here to go to Europe. So on this way. So every Silk Road that was a major Silk Road, it came through this area. So there was a lot of people meeting and mixing together. There was a lot of nomads who lived in this area who were like the middlemen who traded from one person and gave it to the next person. This area is important to, honestly, I feel like this area is important to the entire world, but it's very important to Europe and Asia because it's the connection point. This is the connection, right? It's the center of the connection. So Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, they're all monotheistic religions, which means they have one God. They share their home here, but they also share texts, God, and prophets. Abraham, Isaac, Jesus, they're all prophets that all 3, or at least people that all 3 of those religions deem as very, very important, okay? So I'm going to kind of go through each of those specifically for a little bit. These 3 religions make up, the people who follow these 3 religions make up more than half of the population today. So that's how important these religions are. More than half the world follows one of these religions. So it's pretty darn important. So we're going to start with Judaism. This is the oldest religion. Judaism is. It originated with the Hebrews. It started in when they started this religion, they were kind of surrounded. The Hebrews were surrounded by people who were polytheistic, which means that they believed in more than one God. So when they come out, they said, "No, there's only one God." They're like, "What are you talking about?" So it was kind of hard for people to really understand when Judaism came out. They believe in the 10 Commandments and Moses. They believe in the Old Testament, which is part of the Bible. They don't believe in the New Testament, which is, if you know of like the King James version of the Bible, if you're a Christian today, then you'll know of the Old Testament. They don't believe in that, or the New Testament. They don't believe in the New Testament. Basically, in place of the New Testament, they believe in the Torah, which is basically the book of Moses. So all of his teachings that he had until Jesus came, basically. They emphasize practice over faith. So if you're like doing good things, it doesn't matter if you believe, you got to be a good person if you want to be saved. That's basically what that means. Jews were expelled from Jerusalem a few times, but they've always come back, and they're still fighting for Jerusalem because they want that land. And they currently they control Israel, but they're in a tussle with Palestine, which is the top part of Israel right here. And that's because they both believe the land is supposed to be theirs, and they're fighting each other for it. It's a huge mess, honestly. Really huge mess. Okay, next one is Christianity. So I'm going to, I was going to show you this with the Israel thing. This is going to go through like a timeline of Palestine, which is the top part of Israel. That's where it's located. And just know neither side has clean hands. They're both kind of at fault. So 100 years ago, Palestine wouldn't really exist. Then we have a British mandate for Palestine after World War I, where we have basically these areas where Palestinians lived. Here's Jerusalem right here. Okay. And in the 30s and 40s, there's more people. The population increased. We're going to skip that. And then right here is where it just kind of exploded. They basically started capturing them and sending them out and expelling them from the area. This is what Jews did to Palestinians. So they were forced out over here. We call this area the West Bank, where they live currently. So during this war in the 60s, Israel, I spoke too early. Israel expelled them into the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. So here's Jerusalem. So all of this right here is the West Bank. Okay. The Gaza Strip is right here. There's just pictures. And then it kind of still was like that. So they kind of established for peace, but neither side really like it. Whatever they're going to ask for peace is kind of both ways. Palestinians here were given powers of self-rule, but basically remained under Israeli military occupation. This is actually the longest occupation in modern history. This battle has been going on way before 100 years before now. But that's just a little bit into some of the recent history. Okay. All right. Next, we've got Christianity. Okay, this one is Christianity. I was on this slide earlier, but I didn't even move to the Judaism one. Apologize. So this was basically born from Judaism. Jews and Muslims both believe in the Christ, but Christians believe that he is a savior, while Muslims, Islam, they believe him just to be another prophet. Okay, Jews also believe that he is he's a good person. So Christians believe in the Bible, including the New Testament. They have bishops who basically are the current version of Jesus Christ's disciples, who basically his followers when he was alive. Romans adopted this as their official religion, and they actually, unfortunately, did a lot of bad things in the name of their religion, saying, they did bad things. This is the #1 religion in the world. It has grown more than Judaism, mostly because they relied on missionary work, and they did really great in that. There are 3 main parts or sects, S-E-C-T-S, of Christianity. There's an Orthodox, Eastern, and there we go. There's an Orthodox, there's a Catholic, and which is also considered, Roman Catholicism, right? And Protestant. Okay, so Protestant is mostly popular here in the United States. Orthodox is more in like Russia and Eastern Europe, and Catholic is more in main Europe. Okay, so those are the 3 main parts of Christianity. Protestants, they grew from the Reformation, which is when people in Europe, they saw Christianity and they looked at that. This is actually the Catholic part of Christianity. And they basically had a rule where you can pay money to erase your sins. They're called indulgences. So these guys looked at that and it's like, that was really corrupt. You don't pay money to erase your sins. What about people who are poor? They can't erase sins and then they won't go to heaven. But because you're rich, you can go to heaven all you want. So that was one of the reasons why people started breaking away from Catholicism and creating their own new version of Christianity, which is the Protestant religions. And today, even today, the Christian Catholicism and Protestantism, they have deep divides because they just don't really like each other. So anyways, that's Christianity. Lastly, we have Islam. Let me see. Islam is the name of the religion. The people who believe in it are called Muslims. This is the youngest religion of the top 5 religions in the world. It's also pretty related to Judaism. It's a lot like Christianity. Muhammad is the final prophet. Basically, there was like Abraham, and then Jesus, and then Muhammad. Okay. Quran is the text they believe to. They do believe in the Bible. Bible is basically the first text. The Quran is the second text. Okay. There are 2 major portions, as you saw in there's a map I showed you on Apex that talked about Sunni and Shia Muslims. That's because there's different people. Basically, it's a difference between after Muhammad died, should his father-in-law have taken up the mantle, or should his son-in-law have taken up the mantle? That's really like the beginning of the difference of those 2 parts of the religion. Today is the fastest growing religion in the world, and they are a major, major, major political factor in the Middle East. I want to show you guys this map here that I will have to skip over to. It was briefly on a different map that I showed you, but the amount of countries and landmass that has people who are dominated or is dominated by people who are Muslim is astounding. It makes it so that they are pretty much one of the more powerful religions in the world. Soon it will probably be Christianity soon. So right here, all these countries have great percentages of people in there. Most of these brown ones right here are these kind of light brown ones. Lots percent. So 86% or greater are Muslims. That's a lot, right? There's another map I wanted to show you. These are all the countries with Islam as their official religion. Check that out. That's a lot, right? That's a lot. That's a good chunk of this world. So definitely a very powerful religion. When we think of Muslims and Islam, we mostly think of this area, which is very, this is like the epicenter of it, right? It was, born here in this area, which is why this is the epicenter. But, Islam is growing very fast and it's spreading a lot. So they are a very powerful political factor in the Middle East and in Africa because of how many people in those countries belong to that religion. So if you're going to want to, pursue something, you're going to have to make sure that it sounds good to their religion because most of them are part of that religion. Anyways, so that's just a little bit about those 3 religions that are, basically centered in that southwest region of Asia. So that's it for this quiz.